Hola, everybody. Welcome to the Chats with Yvonne podcast, where we talk about public speaking con cultura. Today, we're going to talk about the power of the pause. And this episode was inspired by something that I noticed that I was doing when posting on social media. And that was that I felt like I needed to rush through what I was saying, that I needed to cut all those moments where I pause, because in my normal speech, I pause intentionally, or, I've just made it a habit to pause because there is so much power in pausing. Count how many times I say pausing throughout this episode. But I realized that I would edit those things out. I don't know if y'all have heard the millennial pause or whatever it is. I found myself editing those out in my videos because, one, on social media, you want to make your videos shorter. You want to make sure that people stay for a little bit longer. Maybe you want to get to the point a lot faster because people's attention span is just not that great anymore. And that made me realize that because of the ways that we operate on social media, we may have actually forgotten or don't often practice enough how powerful a pause is. We're always in a rush. We're constantly trying to get information the quickest way that we can, and we don't take time to pause. One, because we know if I don't say this fast, I may lose people's attention, and pues ahí, that's it. They may not know about what I have to offer, or they may not be invested in this type of learning. And on the other end, as the receiver, I've also gotten accustomed to not hearing any pauses, to just going from point to point to point. But the truth is that when you are on stage, public speaking, when you're delivering a workshop, when you're facilitating a panel, there has to be room for a pause. In fact, it'll make your delivery so much more powerful. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I thought it was only right that for today's podcast episode, we pulled out the Public Speaking con Cultura practice card deck and we used La Emoción. This one kind of doesn't have to do with a pause, but this one is for us to practice tone. It says, think about one of your most recent happy moments, share a short speech recounting that moment, and share it 3 different ways, keeping the following audiences in mind. 1, you're having a cafecito and chisme session with your amiga. You're presenting in front of a leadership committee that needs to know the facts. You want to inspire a room full of 500 high school students. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and do a speech for 3 minutes because I don't know if y'all want to hear that, but if you do, let me know and I will do that. One of the things that I want to actually start incorporating is using the cards and showing y'all how I actually practice it. So this one would be a little bit too long to actually do for today's podcast episode because I want to get to what we're actually talking about, but I'm going to give you a taste of how I think I would answer this and mostly guide you through this. So the reason that I have 3 different audiences on here is because you could recount the same happy moment. And for example, a happy moment that happened recently, literally today, I went on a run. And the way that I would tell or talk about that happy moment to an amiga is very different. My tone would be very different than to an audience, to a leadership committee that wants to know the facts. Maybe with my amiga, I lean more into the feelings of running and of wanting to stop, but knowing that I have a goal and that my body can do hard things and that I can do hard things and that I know I'll feel incredibly proud of myself afterwards. I lean into the feelings of running a lot more. Whereas a leadership committee, I might actually tell them about the benefits of running, right? So I'll tap into the feelings of it and say from personal experience, I know that when you are running, it is very tough mentally. And then go into some of the facts about running and how it actually can help mental health or it can relate to public speaking. And then the last one is you want to inspire a room full of 500 high school students. This one, you can do a combination of the two. Really provide detail on both the feeling and the fact. Because maybe what you want to do is inspire people to run. And so you want to tap into the feelings. I feel alive. It hurts. Everything hurts. But I keep thinking to myself, one step at a time. One step at a time. And maybe for those people, for those high school students in the audience that are like, yeah, but tell me the facts, you might incorporate some of the facts in there. So essentially, this practice, when you think about this practice, I want you to think about the tone in which the audience that you're presenting to really does dictate your tone. Just like the tone of your voice might change depending on the audience, because they need to feel something different. They need to be engaged in a different way. So your tone is required to change. Your pauses are also incredibly important. That is also a speaking technique. I think it's so natural for us to want to speed through our speeches. Because, I mean, if I look back at my very first keynote, I was speeding for the first like 2 to 3 minutes of that presentation because I was nervous. Y no lo podía evitar. O sea, I wanted to just be done with it. I was having so much fun, and fun in the way that it was a new experience. It was something that I had never done before, that I never imagined I would do. I was speaking to 1,500 people. Everybody was staring at me. I recall, obviously, being very nervous, really enjoying it at the same time, but speeding through the first part of my presentation. And it wasn't until I got to the middle where I started to pause a little bit. Even then, when I look back at my very first speaking engagement and the ways that I would fix it today, I think about in those moments when I was feeling really, really nervous, I felt like I needed to fill the room, fill the space with my voice talking, because the attention was on me. Everybody was looking at me, and I didn't want it to feel like an awkward silence. And that is why I ended up using so many filler words, especially in the beginning, because I was trying to find my grounding, right? Like my foundation on the stage. It was something I'd never done before, and I was very nervous. And once you sort of start to settle into it and find your voice and your pace within it eventually, but even then, I didn't know that pausing was a technique. Instead, so many times, and maybe you do this too, is instead of pausing, we add filler words. So I want to talk about really briefly why we might use filler words. Filler words can be used for many, many different reasons, right? The first one is that we go unchecked. I am not counting how many likes and ums you use in everyday life. I hope that no one in your life is actually doing that, because that is really annoying. But because our use of filler words go unchecked in our daily conversations, it becomes a habit because it's something that we practiced often. Second is sometimes we're trying to figure out what comes next. Maybe we forgot what comes next. Maybe we are going from one topic to the next thing and we kind of forgot what that next thing is. So we incorporate a filler to give ourselves time to think and get back on track. Then it's maybe that, hey, I want my audience to catch up to what I'm saying. So I'm going to insert a little filler word in there so to give them some time to internalize what I'm saying. And lastly, it's probably that you want to let people know that you're not done speaking, but again, you need a little bit of time, right? So this is the case maybe when you are in an office setting and you don't want someone else to interject, right? Because so often we listen to respond versus just to listen. And the way that you cue someone to let them know that you're not done talking is by continuing to talk. Right? We all have that. Once we hear the pause, then we respond to whatever is being said. So we use filler words to fill in the blanks there so that you don't interrupt me and don't think that I'm done speaking and leave me the mic. The reason I want to share that is because all of those reasons why we use filler words are actually the exact reasons we should be adding pauses. Not only is it an incredible speaking technique to apply to engage your audience deeply, but, right, if we go back to filler words are used because we go unchecked in our daily conversations. Okay, that means that we practice that more often. Great. It also means we should be practicing pausing more often. Take a breath. It's okay. Keep people here. It's okay to take your time delivering your message. Then the second one is, oh shoot, I kind of forgot what comes next. The pause is a great technique to give you time to think about what's coming next and find your way back to that idea. But what it also does is it gives your audience the illusion that you're being real pensive and like you did that on purpose. If you didn't, because there is ways to be intentional, and sometimes we do kind of forget what we were about to say. So the pause is always a great way. But it also gives them time to internalize, right? So if we know that, hey, we're using filler words because we said something complex, or maybe want to give my audience a little bit of time to internalize what I'm saying, the pause fixes that. And it reduces the amount of filler words that you use. But when you are on stage, you are in control of the conversation. You get to manage everybody's time, everybody's thought process while you're up there, because you are the one leading us through a conversation. So you can pause. You don't have to worry about someone interrupting your thought or saying something because, again, you're in control. You're in control of a situation. So pausing is really, really going to be impactful as a public speaker and as a storyteller. Why does pausing matter for your audience? We talked about why it matters because it gives your audience time to process information. Think about the first thing that I said about social media, right? If now we are used to consuming information in this super quick, fast way, imagínate when you're up on stage, you have to use the power of the pause to help people internalize what you're saying and give them some time to think about it. Not give them so much information that they intake it and they don't know what to do with it, right? Being on stage, delivering a speech, talking to folks, creating conversations around it is different than us creating a video for content and for engagement on social media. The pause helps emphasize your message. Think about the difference between, maybe, I don't know, let me come up with something on the spot. Let's take, for example, the sentence, I didn't know how deeply I could love public speaking until I connected it to my cultura. Let's incorporate a deeper pause there. I didn't know how deeply I would love public speaking until I connected it to my cultura. It's just a little different. You get me? The pauses there, I kind of just made that up on the fly, but the pauses there may be a little awkward or whatever it is, but that's the practice to do, right? Is it emphasizes your message. And my pauses were incorporated in the moments where I wanted people to really pay attention. I didn't know how deeply I could love public speaking until I connected it to my cultura. Right? There's a technique to where you insert the pauses so that people pay the most attention to what you just said and are anticipating and are wanting to hear what you have to say next. Pausing really also helps you as the speaker. I cannot tell you how many times after that first 2 to 3 keynotes actually, when I started really saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I am a public speaker. I'm getting paid to speak. I want to grow in my skill. And when I started to incorporate the pause, the very first thing that I needed to do was manage my nerves. Understand where they were coming from so that I could incorporate techniques to help me when I was on stage. Because I knew what I was talking about. I liked doing it. I enjoyed it. But as soon as I was going up on stage, the nerves it was just crazy how nervous I got. And still do, by the way. And I knew that, again, my lack of pausing or my nerves actually make me talk a little bit faster and incorporate more filler words in between because my brain can't keep up with what I'm trying to say out loud. So pausing became almost like a safety blanket for me to say, okay, I am going to be intentional with my pausing so that I can regulate my nerves, maybe breathe during that moment of pause to one, emphasize my message, right? That is what the audience is receiving. But for me, I can calm myself down while I'm on stage actively. The pause can really build trust and presence. Have you thought about when you go on stage and you're talking about something that you're an expert in or your story? If you come across as and talking super, super quickly, one, it may not give people time to process the genius that you are, the powerful speaker that you are, right? And so what does that do? That kind of creates a little bit of a barrier between you and your audience and that trust and connection that you can have. So pausing builds this trust. I think one of the best examples of this is Obama. Even in conversations, I just watched an interview with him, and even when he's talking, not delivering a speech necessarily, but just talking, he still pauses. And yes, he is definitely, most definitely PR trained, totally. But I think just the cadence of his voice, he's very intentional with his words. And that has a lot to do with his PR training. But I also think that the technique of pausing has allowed him to be intentional with his words and choose them. Maybe he doesn't know where the sentence is going next in the interview, but because he's paused, he's allowed himself some time to think about what's coming next. And also, it makes the audience feel like he knows what he's talking about. I'm not saying this is the case, right? But generally, that's what I think. And I have to say that the pause needs to be intentional, because I myself, from personal experience, I can't tell you how many times I was like, dude, I just gave way too many ideas in one sentence. I should give one, pause, get a reaction, and then provide the next thing. So I totally understand what it's like to not incorporate the pause, which is why being intentional with it is important. Practicing the pause is important. Going through, and at the end of this podcast episode, I'll give you some tips, but going through your speech and deciding, where do I want people to really focus? Where can I add an intentional pause? And I'll tell you why this is so important. When at the most recent Storytelling Like Our Abuelitas mini retreat, part of what we did was share our reflections out loud. And as people were sharing them, first of all, incredible writers and storytellers, right? Because it's in our cultura, todo lo llevamos ya, right? That we've been doing it forever. But one of the attendees was sharing, and I don't even know if they were doing it on purpose or not, right? Which is exactly what I wanted to happen. I didn't want to provide them techniques to practice. I wanted them to know that it's already in them, and for everyone else to also notice them, because that then we can attach an actual name to the technique that you're using, and it feels like it's yours versus me giving you a tip. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, they shared their reflection and they were pausing really intentionally, and it made us feel every single word. And what was really beautiful was that I asked everybody in the room to provide feedback, and not feedback in the way of, I think next time you could do this, but feedback in, hey, this is a two-way communication stream. I want you to know that I am listening, and this is how this resonated with me, because we become better speakers when we receive feedback anyway. So it's important to know how our message was received. The person that gave feedback said, I really loved how you paused, because when you were pausing, it made me want to know what was coming next. It kept me really engaged. And I was like, yes, I was nerding out, because I was like, this is exactly the power of the pause. When you're intentional with it, it makes your audience feel so connected and just like, okay, what's going to be said next? And that's what you want to be doing. That's what social media has kind of made us forget, that there is so much power in pausing, in being pensive, and being a little slower with your delivery. Kind of as an extension of the storytelling like our abuelitas, what it really reminded me of too was this pause, right? The pause that I'm talking about, this speaking technique that I'm talking about, is already something that we do, something that we have implemented for years. Cuando mi abuelita me decía, sí, ¿y qué crees que hice? Paused. Y que lo agarro del cuello. I'm talking about the snake here. This is the story. If you know, you know. Que lo agarro del cuello. She looks at me, pauses. Y con mis manos. Then she does the little twist with her hand, right? So even the way that my grandma told stories, there were pauses in there. That is the power of being able to say, oye, public speaking is storytelling. Storytelling es mi cultura. We have done it already. Of course, we have to keep in mind all of the nerves that come with something, the context, the environment in which you're in. Are you in an environment where, hey, if I pause, they're not going to let me talk. They're just going to keep talking over me. I understand that. So when we think about public speaking for the purposes of writing a speech, being on stage, think about your connection to the pause, your cultural connection to the pause. We're not meant to be go, 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 go all the time. We're not meant to, even as audience members, internalize 5,000 different facts during your speech. Please help us internalize what you're saying by incorporating an intentional pause. So, I want to give you some ways to actually practice the pause. Practice taking a deep breath before you start speaking. And again, I remind you, it may feel awkward to do this, but you can do this because you are in control of the conversation and of the time spent on stage. This will look something like inhale, exhale, give it like 2 seconds, and start your story or start your speech. So, por ejemplo, getting on a stage is the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't know if, I felt it in my body, but even my delivery of it felt a lot less hype. It felt more intentional. So breathing before you speak, allowing a little bit of a 2-second break in between there, and then starting is actually going to make you probably feel better in your delivery, but it's going to even change the way that you sound delivering it. The second one is punctuation. I always say this. When we read, we know sentences have periods at the end. We know when it's something exciting because that sentence has an exclamation at the end. We know when it was a question because it has a question mark at the end. We know when it's a comma because there's a comma in between it. Our sentences, when we're on stage speaking, also have punctuation. If we remember that, it'll help us incorporate the pause a lot more. For example, every single one of your sentences on stage when you're speaking have a period at the end. And if you keep that in mind and say, it helps me visually see it and say, okay, this sentence has a period at the end of it. If it's not a period, it's a comma, which still has a mini pause, maybe not that much of a deep intentional pause or super long pause, but a little pause. So reminding ourselves that our sentences have punctuation will help us practice that pause. The third one is probably one that I think is one of the best ways to understand yourself as a speaker, and that's to record yourself. You don't have to share this with anybody. It can just be a recording for yourself, and it could be super short. It could even be a speech that you have already delivered that you have a recording of. Go ahead and watch it. Think about what moments might you have incorporated a pause. Actually stop it, write it down, and then practice delivering it again. Record yourself again. Practice delivering it again with those pauses inserted and see the difference. Try to see if you can feel a difference between the first one where maybe you weren't thinking about pausing as intentionally, and the second one where you actually went in there and said, okay, I'm going to pause right here. I want to pause here. This is really important, so I want to pause here. And what the difference was in the way that you delivered it. And you, because you're the audience member in the situation, how you felt receiving the information. A subheader of that one, I would say, is when you are going back to think about where you want to add the pauses, I would add them in the moments where you're delivering something meaningful. If your whole message is, my voice matters and I'm going to use it, right? There's a difference in my voice matters and I'm going to use it, and my voice matters, I'm going to use it. Pause there, right? There's a period at the end of my voice matters and a start of a new sentence. So when you go back into that recording, or even as you're putting together a speech, think about, what are some key phrases that I really want my audience to remember? If they forget anything else that I say, and they won't, because you are incredible and you have brought them to a very specific moment in time, and storytelling is most definitely your thing. But just in case they did, think about those key phrases, key moments in your speech that you don't want people to forget. Add pauses there. And by the way, I should add, the pause doesn't need to be a whole minute, a whole 30 seconds, a whole 20 or 10 seconds. It could literally be 1 to 2 seconds. That's what I mean by the pause. I probably should have defined that earlier on, but the pause isn't really long. It's just enough to let your message sink in. And I just had this idea right now, but I think it would be really cool because, y'all, I'm finalizing all the things for the public speaking club. And I think it would be really cool to incorporate a practice of pausing for like 30 seconds, where you just sit there, you say something, you pause for 30 seconds, and then keep going, just so that you can feel awkward in that pause, but understand why it's so important. If you would like to do that yourself, do that as well, right? Say a sentence. For example, we could take what I mentioned of my voice matters, and I'm going to use it. You could say, my voice matters, 30-second pause, which will feel really awkward, and I will use it, right? Just to get comfortable with the pause. I think that would be a cool exercise to do. All in all, I hope that you understand how important the pause can be in helping your audience internalize your message, but also helping you really feel confidence in that delivery. Silence is really, really powerful. I know that we live in a world that rewards extroversion, that asks you to be louder all of the time, but there is a lot of power in that pause, in staying silent, even for just 2 seconds. There's so much power in that. When you go out into the world and you go attend speaking engagements, or you see other people speaking, pay attention to how they're using the pause. Really think and dissect those moments, and think about what that pause is making you feel, or what it's helping you do in relation to what they're talking about. We have such incredible stories to tell, deep knowledge about the world, about our line of work, about our careers, our research. And you don't need to rush through that. I don't want you to rush through that genius. You get me? Like, you deserve to take time on that stage. You deserve to take your time delivering something, because you've worked so hard to get to that space. Your audience deserves to really immerse themselves in your expertise, in your story. There's no need to rush it. Because I promise you, I always said this to folks, but getting to the stage and actually speaking is very, very hard. It's probably harder to do the prep part of it than once you're on stage and deliver it. But once you get off that stage after having delivered your message, it is one of the most empowering things ever. You will become addicted and you want to just do it over and over again. So why rush through it? I know why we rush through it, and it's why the practice of the pause is incredibly important. It's kind of like running. I was thinking about this today, but I always have a hard time getting to the run. I never actually want to run. when I'm on the run, there are so many things that I'm thinking about that I'm like, I still don't want to be doing this. Mile 1, mile 2, mile 3, still don't want to do this. I get comfortable about mile 4 or 5, and then I'm done. I'm like, wow, that was so amazing. I love running. And then the next day, I have to go through the process again of, I don't want to do this run. But after every single run, you never regret it. And it's so empowering. I promise you that that's the same thing that happens when you go on a stage. And if I can give you some techniques, some advice, some guidance as far as how to practice so that when you are on that stage, you can really immerse yourself in your essence